I love musicals, and I love Broadway, and I love Betsy, but I feel like a lot of young people my age just aren't really into that as much. Or at least the general population of young people.
Okay, all right, so no one has any ideas. I mean, no one?
Wait, I got it.
What?
We can put on a big show. With lavish costumes and huge expensive sets, we'll charge like $150 a ticket.
Unless you were a theater kid in school, Broadway just doesn't hit the same for the general populace. I feel among the younger crowd, musicals just tend to be less and less popular, minus the one-offs. The one-offs. It's kind of sad, really. In recent years, there's been a boom of musicals aimed towards teens to young adults. We've got Be More Chill, Heathers, Jagged Little Pill, Mean Girls, which I'm seeing in November, and many others. The ones I've listed are set in high schools. The only youngins who get excited about productions on the Great White Way are typically theater kids.
Our sacred bond of sisterhood!
But you don't have to have done theater in high school to be a fan. I mean, I was a band kid. But there's one musical that stands out above the rest. In my opinion, this show has one of the best portrayals of a teenager in any medium that I've ever seen. And that show is Dear Evan Hansen. A show that combines the stresses and anxieties of social life, growing up, and taking responsibility, all while taking place somewhere as familiar as high school, with the backdrop of social media and parasocial relationships that come with it. I saw it when the tour came to Portland, and Sam Primack was my Evan for the matinee showing. It was pretty good. Now, if you've read the title or have seen some of the promotions around the time I released this video, you may know that there's a movie based on the musical, and I went and saw it. Okay, well, we're here to watch the Dear Evan Hansen movie. I've got my blue striped polo, and let's see how trashy it is. What the hell was that? That was not worth it. How the hell did Hollywood manage to butcher this musical this bad? Spoilers ahead for the movie. Also, sensitive subject matter for some people moving forward. Dear Evan Hansen centers around the titular Evan, who is assigned to write letters to himself as a sort of self-pep talk by his therapist. Dear Evan Hansen, today is going to be an amazing day, and here's why. After a small altercation with another boy in his class, Connor Murphy, Evan is later approached by him. Connor apologizes and signs his cast. Oh yeah, he broke his arm. Only for him to find one of Evan's letters. After accusing Evan of messing with him, Connor storms off. Later, it's revealed that Connor committed suicide. This is still early on, by the way. Connor's parents find the note and are convinced that he wrote it to Evan. Dear Evan Hansen. The entire rest of the musical is Evan's attempt to keep up with the lie that they were friends after he finds that spending time with the Murphys, particularly Connor's sister Zoe, helps his anxiety. This is a big oversimplification of the plot, but you could probably find a better synopsis elsewhere on the internet. Or you could just see the musical, either on Broadway or on tour. Or you could do something totally unrelated and go watch a slime tutorial on YouTube. That was a joke. Please support Broadway. Okay, I won't pretend to know a lot about theater and how it works. Like I said, I was never in theater, but I feel like I have enough perspective as someone who has seen both the film and the stage show. The film opens with a change. Evan still appears and types up his letter, that's the same, but there's a slight shift in perspective, only following Evan at the beginning. In fact, the whole movie follows just him. The musical does this, but juxtaposes it against his mom Heidi and Connor and Zoe's mom Cynthia having parallel problems of not quite understanding their children. The musical opens with the song Anybody Have a Map, but the film decides to go straight into waving through a window. Cynthia and her husband Larry aren't even introduced until after Connor's died, cutting out what their dynamic was like before it happened. Like on stage, the film then takes us to school. Here's the blue striped elephant in the room. I'm sure many of you have heard the talk, but let me do a quick recap. Ben Platt was part of the cast of the show on Broadway as Evan. He originated the role. Dear Evan Hansen premiered on November 14th, 2016, and he would continue to play the role until November 17, 2017. Like it or not, he was Evan Hansen. Around that time, Ben Platt would have been about 23. In June 2020, it was announced that he would reprise his role for the film. When this was announced, Mr. Platt was 26, approaching 27. Yeah, by that point, he wasn't looking like a high schooler. People were questioning the casting, accusing the film of nepotism, as Ben Platt's father, Mark Platt, was a producer of the film. In response, Ben Platt had this to say.
I mean, I think, people like to, have something to say that is negative, regardless of what it is. And so if my thing is something that I can't control at all, which is my age, then, bring it on. You know what I mean? I'm glad it's not about the performance or my voice or anything that actually matters. I think the reaction is largely from people that don't know the context of the piece. The fact that I created the role and workshopped it for 3 years and did all of the out-of-town productions and originated on Broadway and received the accolades that I did, and also not really understanding the fact that were I not to do the movie, it probably wouldn't get made. And so I think my defensive response is to want to go onto Twitter and be F you guys, you don't even know that this wouldn't exist without me. And of course, that's not true entirely. And that's not my place to say. And it's all I have to do is let the work kind of speak for itself. And hopefully people will realize that it's sort of ingrained in me and that this is there wasn't really any question on anyone actually connected to the piece or who is actually a part of the film. There was never any kind of discussion that it wouldn't be me.
Wow, I'm just going to speak my opinion on this. First and foremost, I am absolutely a huge fan of Ben Platt. His singing is phenomenal, and he's got a whole future ahead of him as an actor. Though, this film probably won't win him that Oscar. But his logic for the role is just very flawed. I can understand taking the role for the film based on the fact that you originated the role, but then why didn't they cast Rachel Bay Jones, Laura Dreyfus, Mike Weiss, Jennifer Laura Thompson, Will Rowland, and Michael Park? Not a very long cast list. I mean, they played the roles too, and in the case of Rachel Bay Jones, she also won a Tony for her role, while Mike Weiss was nominated for one for his. But he's probably too busy with West Side Story. Not gonna lie, I don't know what he could have said, but despite this, there will still be things the film could have done. First off is his hair. Ben Platt's hair in the show was fine. Why change it? I have nothing against the hairstyle itself, but I think it's the back part, the mullety part of it. The hair's fine, it's just not what's popular today. There are kids with that kind of hair, yeah, but it's not about having a youthful haircut, it's about having a haircut that makes him look younger. Hair and makeup must have been forced to do this by someone else, because this decision just didn't really do Ben Platt any justice. I mean, he just recently played a high schooler on The Politician. The cast is a mixed bag. I think individually they can be okay and they have their okay points. Some of them are pretty bad, some of them are alright. But they have to work well together, and that's kind of my big issue with the film. But one standout performance comes from Colton Ryan, who plays Connor, and he's the only other actor besides Ben Platt to come from the stage musical, where he also understudied Evan and Jared. Julianne Moore and Amy Adams as Heidi Hansen and Cynthia Murphy were okay. Nick Dodani's Jared, I felt, was a different take that I'll get into later, but at the end of the day, I think the actor did well with it. And finally, Caitlin Deaver, Amanda Stenberg, and Danny Pino's performances were easily the poorest in the whole film. And I really think all they needed was some good direction, but I doubt they were getting that in the first place. With the direction they went with Ben Platt, the casting just made the problem more obvious. The high school characters look like high school characters. Connor had a hairstyle change, but it was something believable. Colton Ryan's only 2 years younger than Ben Platt, but they made it work. In scenes where Evan and Zoe share the screen, it just feels awkward. The age gap is very noticeable. If they wanted Ben Platt as Evan that badly, they should have done a better job casting him. It's as if the cast was put together with the expectation that there'd be a younger actor, but last minute they got Ben Platt. He responded to the age controversy by pointing towards Grease's cast, but Grease only worked because all the actors were older. Ben Platt is the only older actor in his film.
How do you do, fellow kids?
What?
Kind of astonishing since we just had an actual teenager playing Evan. Andrew Barth Feldman took over the lead role on Broadway at the age of 16. Since doing that role, he's apparently been pretty good in the second season of High School Musical, the series. I haven't seen it yet, just what I heard, but a younger Evan would have solved this. Why didn't they cast him? Please don't fall into this trap with your movie, Mean Girls the Musical. Where were we with the plot? Oh yeah, Evan's at some assembly at school. Alana is introduced as one of those involved with everything, does everything students as she leads the speech. Zoe's playing guitar with the jazz band, and the band is playing a cover of both Good For You and Anybody Have a Map, which both were cut from the film. Sucks that they both got cut, but it's a fun Easter egg. Evan and Jared are handling the sound mixing for the assembly. For some reason, it's an assembly, not the school play, but okay. That reminds me, the sound mixing in this film is atrocious. I'm not sure if it was my theater, but the audio clearly dips between different tracks of varying levels of quality. I'm a terrible sound mixer myself, so I'm surprised I even picked that up. Apparently a lot of the recording was done live on set to preserve the authenticity, whatever that means. That aside, Jared and Evan have their conversation as per the original show, but an interesting change is made. Jared's gay now. Whoa there. Hear me out, please don't cancel me. Obviously, they've casted Jared as a different race, but the character is also now gay. For the record, recasting roles to people of different ethnicities and backgrounds is nothing new on Broadway, and it's fine. Nothing big. The change to his sexuality, while there's nothing wrong with it itself, I believe was just handled bizarrely. Nick Dodani kinda steals the scenes he's in. The casting was good, but the writing was weird. They really went out of their way to write out Jared's edge throughout the film. They cut some of Jared's jokes, particularly some of the meaner ones, because I guess gay people can't be mean. Jared's character served as a bit of a foil to Evan, in that he had enough confidence to do what he wanted, but he hid behind his humor, and despite calling him a family friend, it's implied he considered Evan a friend by the time he feels betrayed later. At least on stage. In the film, he's just kind of cynical. His character served to bring levity and humor to the more serious parts of the story. One of the more racy, pulls collar says yike lines from the show, him addressing Connor and calling his look very school shooter chic, was given to a minor, unnamed character. And one explanation for the change in Jared's sexuality was to help curb apparent homophobic jokes that Jared makes in the original show. Except they're not very homophobic. They're about as homophobic as the vine of the two guys sitting in a hot tub 5 feet apart because they're not gay. Which doesn't even matter because he still makes those jokes in the film anyway. A line where Jared points out that Evan and Connor's relationship could be misconstrued as gay was instead sexualized and replaced with a line where he makes it sound more erotic. How does that solve any of the homophobia problems? The next few scenes of the film are similar to the musical. Connor gets mad at Evan, Zoe apologizes for her brother, and Evan is awkward then runs away. The library scene, I'd say, is done better than the musical, with Connor not picking up the letter until a bit later. The meeting scene with Larry and Cynthia Murphy, Mora? They made a change to Larry. He is now Connor and Zoe's stepfather. Besides this, the rest of the scene plays out similarly. I think the change to Larry is just weird. Larry Mora, I don't even remember if they mentioned his last name, as a character, somehow managed to make Larry Murphy, who was already underutilized as it is, even harder to understand. The reason for this change is apparent later on in the film when it's mentioned that Connor and Zoe's biological father died. Connor knew him, but Zoe did not, implying that there was a strain on Larry and Connor's relationship. But I don't think it worked the way they intended. If anything, it just seemed to disconnect Larry more, and it felt like it meant less when he finally broke down. Not to discount step-parents, but this new direction changes the dynamic from a dysfunctional father-son relationship to a bad relationship due to circumstance. It's just an extra variable that was unneeded. You know what I haven't really touched on too much? It's the singing parts of Dear Evan Hansen. I mean, it's not like it's a musical or anything. Music-wise, I think the performances were passable. The best ones are obviously from Ben Platt. At worst, the songs don't feel like they have the same oomph as they did on stage, particularly during Requiem. If you ignore my sound mixing woes, at least your ears won't be bleeding. But I'm no vocalist, so I'm not as accustomed to critiquing singing, so apologies there. But the direction and cinematography of each number are where the film jumps out of a tree and falls flat on its arm and breaks it. The film takes a very grounded approach. With the exception of Sincerely Me and the one odd part in Requiem, the characters, usually Evan, just sing while everyone else kind of sits there and watches. In Waving Through a Window, the original version featured the principal cast accompanying Evan for the final chorus. This doesn't happen in the film. There's just a choir that doesn't physically appear, all while background characters act as if nothing is happening. It just feels awkward and disjointed, and this persists throughout the whole film. During For Forever, when Evan is invited over to the Murphys for the first time, he breaks into song and the characters look at him like they're waiting for him to shut up. On stage, this works because the set design leaves it to the imagination. He could be far across the yellow fields, but in the film, he's just pacing around the dining room. Later on, during If I Could Tell Her, I was too distracted by Ben Platt circling the island countertop in the kitchen. He's literally singing in someone's empty house, and there isn't even choreography to make it fun. You don't need an elaborate number, but there's gotta be more effort than slapping music on a mundane scene. Change the lighting, let the characters get on the counter. Feels like they couldn't do too much in the house because they didn't take out insurance for renting it in case something broke. Cheap Airbnbs. In contrast, Sincerely Me does it way better. It's actually pretty alright, with the same spirit as the show. They dance, cut away, interact with the set, and it feels like everyone's participating in the song and not just watching. It's the only good number in the whole film because of this. It's not anywhere close to the Broadway version, but it's the best. I mentioned a weird scene in Requiem. Well, Zoe sings it, as she does in the musical. Nothing weird there. I feel the handling of Cynthia and Larry was just a bit poor here, but not super egregious. But the real problem is where it cuts to a scene of Zoe driving, and she's flooring it.
Floor it?
Yes. No! No! Don't floor it!
Floor it?
No! No, no! Don't floor it!
Okay, floor it!
No!
She literally pulls a Bella Swan. They made her so visually emo, they took the worst bit of the second film in the Twilight series and put it in Dear Evan Hansen. There really isn't a whole lot different until the end of the film, minus one of the new songs, so let's speed through. Heidi asks Evan about Connor, but he lies about knowing him. Jared helps Evan forge fake emails to prove that he and Connor were friends. And Evan spends more time with the Murphys and gets closer to them, especially Zoe. A small change happens here. In the musical, Evan talks to Connor, who appears in the form of his conscience. Kind of like an imaginary friend. He pretty much convinces Evan to man up. This is where the song Disappear would have been if it hadn't been cut. It's about finding confidence in yourself that everyone deserves to be seen. But the film replaces it with a worse song with the exact same message, except from Alana's perspective. Yeah, they really wanted to give Alana more to do, but this just ended up shoving in your face that the characters were depressed. The new song, the anonymous ones, has no reason to be there. They would have accomplished the same thing by just giving Alana Disappear, but even then she feels shoehorned. Why do we care about her? They make it extremely clear that she also suffers from anxiety. In fact, they really make a big deal of the anxiety medication in this film. I know a rule of the film is to show, don't tell, but this is too much show. Alana's line later on in Good For You that was cut from the film is really all you need to understand her motivations. Now the audience has to split their attention away from Evan and worry about another character. The song isn't even that good in my opinion. We went from a driving song that helped pump up Evan and Disappear to one that doesn't even change either character. It's treated as this character piece that we're supposed to feel sad for, but I just don't care. After this, they start up the Connor Project, a student outreach program in his honor. Evan would be asked to speak at it. Cynthia takes Evan to Connor's room, where she hands him one of his old ties for him to wear. A change in the film is that they show and mention a guitar that they come back to later. And the speech scene takes place, going into You Will Be Found. Social media was always part of the show's identity, but it was never in the forefront. In fact, it was literally in the background. The show originally featured Jared and Alana making buttons and bracelets of Connor. They were pretty much selling merch of him. Go to sharkrobot.com and use the code Connor to get 10% off. The film simplifies their endeavors with a Kickstarter campaign. During You Will Be Found, there is more emphasis placed on people watching Evan's speech online, but here they specifically characterize him, as if making their collective a new character in and of itself. The film makes more of an effort to show people connecting to the speech over social media and getting invested in the Connor project. Alana feels responsible for this, and when attention on the Connor project dies down, she feels she must do something for it. This wasn't present in the musical, at least not in the shape or form. While a neat idea, it's just too much for the story. Again, our attention is being split between Evan and whatever Alana's got going on. Honestly, I'm getting flashbacks to the prom, and we all know how terrible that was. Up next is a scene between Larry and Evan, and they're supposed to be bonding. In the original, Larry sings to break into glove. He laments about how he never got a chance with Connor to play catch when he was young, and passes on his dad advice that he never got to. He tells Evan that his father is lucky to have a son like him. Evan agrees, but then later takes it back, telling him his father left him when he was young. The two embrace. It's a sweet scene. People do say the song is the weakest on the soundtrack, but it accomplishes its goal of establishing Evan's relationship with the Murphys, with his new fake family. The film does this scene in a way that's laughably bad. Larry and Evan talk about baseball, and he hands him an autograph ball. No song happens, but the same remark about how lucky Evan's dad is still present. Evan still agrees, however, instead of Evan taking it back and admitting that his dad left, it hard cuts back to Evan at home texting his real dad who's ghosting him. Oh, yikes. Evan and Zoe get together and they stop attending Connor Project meetups, with fewer people showing up to meetings. This leaves Alana and Jared, who's also a part of it, out to dry. Alana confronts Evan when she tells him that people are noticing inconsistencies. She asks if she had been, through her development with the Connor Project, been lying to people, suspecting the emails to be fake. Evan, in an attempt at damage control, sends Alana the original letter that started it, which is Connor's apparent suicide note. Dear Evan Hansen. Some differences here, again. Alana, in the original, just points out how things didn't line up. She didn't outwardly feel the guilt of lying to people. After Evan gives it to her, she just releases it, and that's that. In contrast, the film shows her thinking over it and impulsively does it. I'm not opposed to giving characters hard decisions such as this, but it takes away from Evan. This places the fault on Alana rather than him. Like I've said, we need to stop splitting the weight. I'd love to have more of Alana and Jared sharing responsibility. There's only so much you can tell in this kind of story. Finally, with the exclusion of Good For You, there is no final send-off for Jared and Alana, and also Heidi, to air out their frustrations toward Evan. They just kind of stop being important. The plot stays the same, all the way up to the awkward Words Fail, where, for some reason, Ben Platt decided to add a few Chris Chan stress sighs. The Murphys are being harassed and are being caused a lot of distress once the internet begins to pick apart Evan and Connor's relationship. Evan eventually breaks into song, and all I could think of during it was, wow, stop singing and get out of their goddamn house.
I don't know. I was thinking of something to say. I'm sorry.
As per the original, Heidi sings So Big So Small, which works with a more grounded cinematography. I believe it's also the only time Julianne Moore sings in the film, right at the very end. But that's where the film stops and switches over to the driver's seat. The original version of the story ends with Evan accepting his mistake and making up with Zoe in the orchard. The situation isn't fixed, but they move on. The film instead has Evan make an apology post online. Surprised it wasn't a video. He also looks at people in Connor's life to learn more about him. And how tone deaf can this film be? Leave this poor family alone! you've done enough to them, and it's treated like some happy ending because Evan finds a video of Connor singing an original song, hence the guitar from earlier, and everyone smiles and is happy. No, what makes Dear Evan Hansen so good is that the ending is bittersweet. The main character is punished for his actions. Instead, he gets a pass here. Even Zoe in the original ending being okay with meeting him was a lot. This was just gratuitous. The film ends, and you have a bad taste in your mouth. Musical movies are hard to make right. In my opinion, the original West Side Story did it best, and none so far have gotten it beaten. Fingers crossed for the new one. Pro shots aside, I don't understand some of the creative liberties this movie took, and many others like it. It could be a cash grab, and it could also be a lazy attempt at adapting a very popular and powerful show, or it could be both. But it fails to capture the spirit of the show. In general, I see Broadway musicals as a peak form of contemporary performance. Outside of opera, no other medium forces actors to act, dance, and sing live 8 times a week. I know that sounds pretentious, but objectively it kind of is. It's a triathlon of the performing arts. The magic is in the feat of accomplishing these productions. In a filmed environment, it's hard to capture that. On top of all this, bizarre decisions in writing to make certain characters stand out and attempts at more representation were only at face value. They added nothing. A lot of the film was also made more serious, and other than a few moments, you were tense the entire time. The film dropped a lot of the humor that was used to balance the heavier scenes. You have to have that humor. Without the humor, the gut punches don't hit as hard. You need to contrast it. And then there's the awkwardness of casting the original lead of the musical and putting him in an environment that he does not fit in. I still love Dear Evan Hansen, and this musical did a lot for me in my freshman year of college, processing things like my own social awkwardness and the untimely loss of one of my friends. I think an authentic attempt at adapting this film would have at least paid some respect to the strength of the original. But I don't think that happened. Dear Evan Hansen, the film, does not hold a candle to Dear Evan Hansen, the stage musical. Thank you so much for watching my first video. I really hope there's going to be more in the future. So please, subscribe, hit that bell. Wow, it's kind of cringe that I'm saying that now. Ugh, yike, pulls collar, ugh. If you want to follow me at twitch.tv/mintbaribusiness or on Twitter at mintbaribusiness.